pretty. Come along. Hey garden gals and guys, it's Steph with Tiny's Garden, and today is Sunday, February 25th. I am getting some more seeds going with soil blocking. It is that time. I am about 8.5 weeks out from my last frost date here in zone 5B/6A, and my last frost date is April 25th. So what I'm starting today are some cool flowers, and one of them is one of my favorite cut flowers. It actually doesn't last that long in a vase, but I still think it's stunning, and that is Iceland Poppies. They can handle a light frost. If it dips much more than freezing, I do put up a high tunnel. I had great luck with them last year. They can be tricky to grow, but once you get it down, I really think they're worth it. They're very, very small seeds, so when you're planting them, you might want to do a few in a cell. Don't get worried if you can't do one per cell because it's almost impossible. Last year I did them in cell trays. They've done really well in this cell tray so far. They've been in the greenhouse for several weeks now. This year I'm going to try soil blocking, and that's because I have this whole tray here left over from my Lisianthus that I started, and I'm trying to use it up. Now, fair warning, I don't know if any of these are going to turn out. This soil, because I didn't have my usual soil blocking soil, which is Coco Loco or Vermont Compost Company, is Ocean Forest from Fox Farm, which is a potting soil, but usually used in containers. And my Lisianthus haven't germinated yet, which I did almost 2 weeks ago. So I don't know if this is a waste of time or not, but I want to use up the soil. So we're going to try it, everybody. We're going to try it. I'm skipping the part where I show you how I soil block because, again, this isn't my usual soil. I'm not recommending it because I don't know if it works, but that video is coming soon because I'm going to make sure that my snapdragons are done with my usual mix and a new mix that I'm trying this year. So stay tuned for that. The other thing I'm starting that's a good companion to have on the same tray as your Iceland poppies because they like similar growing conditions are violas, and I'm doing Frizzle Sizzle Yellow Blue Swirl and Imperial Antique Shades, both from Johnny's. These are also known as pansies, really cold hardy, and I love to use these in spring pots. They like to be sowed 8 to 10 weeks before the last frost. So I'm going to get some in here. Their germination is 4 to 7 days at 62 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, while Iceland Poppies is 7 to 12 days at 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to put them on the same tray because they like similar growing conditions. So when you're planting your seeds for the cool flower season, it helps to have similar plants on the same tray. Just something to think about. For Iceland poppies, you can start these 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost. However, last year I started them at 13 weeks out before the last frost. And again, I was really happy with the beautiful, healthy plants that I had. Now, Iceland poppies, as I said, are very small seeds, so it's easy for those seeds to get displaced. So after I plant these, I'm going to mist heavily on top, and then when I come in and water, I'm going to try and be very, very diligent about watering my soil blocks just a little bit in this tray so that that water doesn't rise over the top of the soil block and displace that Iceland poppy seed, because then I won't have anything grown. So let me bring you down here and show you what we've got going on. I forgot to tell you what varieties of Iceland poppies I'm growing. I have Champagne Bubbles Mix, which I grew last year and is beautiful. Those tissue paper-like textures and different colored blooms are so vibrant. Love, love, love. And Champagne Bubbles Pink. Now this one's my favorite out of those colors of the Champagne Bubbles Mix, so I got a full pack of those to plant this year as well. A beautiful bright corally color. Oh, love, love, love. So the first thing I do is make sure I label painter's tape with a garden marker so it does not fade, with the varieties that I'm planting and also the date that I've sowed them. That helps me keep track of when I'm probably going to transfer them out to the greenhouse to grow on a little bit in the cooler weather, because after these germinate, both of these like to grow on at cooler temps. Iceland poppies prefer to grow on between 45 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Champagne bubbles mix is first. Now this germination on Johnny's seed packets, it does tell you the germination percentage is 79. So that's why I'm not going to worry about being too heavy-handed, because only 79% of them are going to actually germinate. And they're so itty bitty, they come in a little packet like this. And there they are in the white cup, so you can see just how tiny they are. Now I'm gonna come in with a chopstick and lick the end lightly so it's a little sticky for the seed to actually pick up on the chopstick. And then I'm just shooting to brush it off on the soil. And if you ask me, can you see where you're putting these? No, not really. So I'm just brushing that chopstick along the dirt and it'll end up laying right on top. So I'm really curious, those of you who have done Iceland poppies in soil blocks before, what were your results? Did you have good luck with it? Did you have bad luck with it? What am I in for here? I used a humidity dome last year on the cell tray. I don't think I'm gonna do that with these this year, which would be like putting plastic wrap on top, because Iceland poppies are so delicate when they emerge or germinate. And I don't want that plastic wrap to rip them off when I take the plastic wrap off. Okay, done with the bubbles mix. So now I'm on to Champagne Bubbles Pink. And like I said, it is 8.5 weeks till my last frost date, so we're starting to get very busy with seed starting. If you're growing along with me, I'm having a little trouble keeping up with videos and seed sowing because I'm pregnant with twins. But some of the things that I want to start immediately are sweet peas. I need to soak those the night before and plant them in my larger 2-inch soil blocks. I had great luck with that last year. I actually started them all in soil blocks in the greenhouse the whole time and they did beautifully. So that is ASAP. And the soil blocks look the healthiest. They've got that deeper green color, no stress on the leaves. Snapdragons I can do now. Sahara Rudbeckia, Triloba Rudbeckia, all the Rudbeckias I can do now. So all of those are on my list to get done ASAP. Bells of Ireland is another one that's coming up. I just put that in my refrigerator because you want to cold stratify it for 1 week, so I will get it out in a week, and so that. Just an FYI on my agenda here as we get into the heyday of the season. Now, if you're curious how long the vase life on these are, it's only a few days, 3 or 4 maybe, but I grow them because they make me happy and I think they're beautiful. I love using them in little bud vases, and to me, they're still worth it. I planted some ranunculus in the same bed as these last year, and they were good companion plants. They grew well together. They like similar growing conditions. Tell me what's going on in your houses or your greenhouses or your sowing station, wherever you grow seeds. What are you growing right now? What's coming on for you? How's your Lisianthus, if you got that in the ground, which you probably did, not the ground, but your soil blocks or your cell trays. I'm a little worried about mine. I'll show you them in a little bit, but I didn't use my usual go-to seed starting supplies for them. And it does make a little difference. Sometimes the tray you use for soil blocking isn't quite ideal, or the soil, like I just explained. And it's my favorite cut flower in the garden, I would say. So if I end up not having any, it'll be a sad day, but it's okay because I gotta focus on growing the babies, which I've been doing, and I'm just a little bit behind. Next year, I'm gonna be better prepared. Okay, all the Iceland poppies have been sowed. Now I'm moving on to Frizzle Sizzle violas. These are still small seeds, but quite a bit bigger, for sure, than Iceland poppies. Definitely a bit bigger, easier to get on the chopsticks and see where you're putting it on your soil block. Also, I wanted to mention I am spacing mine a little bit more apart on these trays than I did last year because I found if I put them side by side, the water, it was more difficult for it to fill along the sides and get the whole soil block wet. So I'm spacing them to where the water can flow in between as well. And I think that'll work a little better for me this year. Now you might be wondering why I'm growing pansies or violas, because they're so readily available at the garden center. And that's because I like unique varieties, and you can't really find unique varieties at the garden center as often. I do like the big blotch ones that I've used before from the garden center. I've also grown those before and those work well, but again, it makes me happy to grow those unique varieties, so I do. Last one, Imperial Antique Shades. So I'm gonna do all of these, and as I'm doing the pansies, I am covering them up a little bit with the dirt if I can, because they do like to be covered lightly. And let me get these sowed, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm gonna do with them after that. Okay, we are all sowed in here, all of those varieties. So what I'm gonna do now is just to settle the seeds a little bit, is very lightly come in with a mister and mist them down. Great, and then cover them with vermiculite. Not too much on the Iceland Poppies, being very light-handed. Vermiculite helps with moisture control, but you still want the light to be able to get through to those Iceland Poppy seeds, so not too heavy. Okay, that's about the most that I'm gonna cover the Iceland Poppies, and then for the pansies, I'm gonna be just a little more heavy-handed. The pansies do like to be covered, so I'm not quite as light-handed over here. Okay, you can see the difference here. Pansies are on my left and poppies are on my right. So now these are set to go on the grow light, and I will put these under the light so the light is on. I'm gonna put them in my upstairs grow light because it's around 70 to 72 in there. It's a little higher than the pansies prefer, but it should be fine. I know my Iceland poppies will be okay because they germinated last year up here. So let's go over to the grow light and get these guys tucked away. Now you can see I do have my Lisianthus up here on a heat mat. I'm not gonna do a heat mat on these this year because I think it's just gonna be a little too warm for them. So all I'm going to do is set them down here under the space that I have, because I haven't cleaned my whole grow light out yet. And what I might do is try and find a little bit of a humidity dome that usually goes on a cell tray and see if I can secure just a little more humidity in there. Okay, I found these two in the basement, so let's see. So letting a little bit of air in. Oh, I like that better. That way I've got just a little more humidity there to help them germinate. And then what I'll do is simply water them every morning. I'll put some water in where there's an opening on the tray and let that flood the tray, but again, not going over the top of the soil blocks. Let it sit for a few minutes and then drain the excess water. It's the next morning and I want to show you what I'm talking about with the watering. Also wanted to show you that the humidity dome is working. You can see the bubbles on it. So that's exciting. I'm happy I'm using that. So we'll take this off. Really delicately pour. And that water will float around the trays and go through the center and the side. Making sure I don't go over the soil block. Let that soak up from the bottom for a few minutes and then I'll drain it. Okay, that looks like they're sufficiently soaked. There's still some excess water in the tray here, so I'm going to delicately pour that out. I'm gonna go from this end of the tray because we're a little higher over here on the blocks and I don't want to go over the top of it. So I'm gonna pour toward the lower level. And I probably had just a little bit too much in here. And nice and slow, pour and drain that way. Okay, that looks pretty good. This one here that you can see is a little more crumbly and has some dirt residue. I don't think was wet enough when I put it on the tray from the soil block. And that is the difference between this falling apart just a little bit and the rest of them. So no big deal, they still look pretty good. This is where I poured it out so you can just see some of the extra is there in the corner, but that's no problem. I'm happy with that. So now the humidity dome will go back on and back under the lights. Once 50% or more of these have germinated, I do think I'm gonna move them down to the basement grow shelf because it's 67 degrees down there. I just double checked, and I think they'll like growing on in there quite a bit more. If I want to move them to the greenhouse, I might trial and air with that because it should be okay in that cold frame out there as well. While you're here, let's take a look real quick at these Lisianthus. So here we are. I just watered them this morning. It's about 11 o'clock. But here you can see this tray is not ideal. It's a little too deep. So when I pour the water out, look at this. That is not what I want. The blocks are falling apart. So I haven't cleaned all my trays out yet, and I wish I would have used a tray like I used today. One of those plastic, almost lunch looking trays. I have those in my Amazon storefront, by the way. I really like them. So that was me being lazy. That's my fault. But this one over here looks pretty good. It's my best looking one. I'm still just waiting for some germination. With my Lizzie's last year, I sowed them on January 15th. I have my notes right here. And 11 days later, I had germination and took them off the heat mat on January 26th. So I'm comparing with my notes from last year, which is really helpful. I sowed these on February 17th because I got a late start. But if I count 11 days, the 28th is where I should be able to see them germinate. Very little tiny green sprouts, the smallest, but still counts as germination. I should be able to see that within the next few days. So fingers crossed, that's 2 days from now. Please work. And now what I'm going to do is put in my notes for this year that I started today my Iceland Poppies and my Pansies. This is why taking notes is really helpful. Meticulous notes about what you're doing, when you're sowing what, when it germinated, when you took some things off, etc., because I can inform the next year's just like I'm doing right now. So if you're not, I really highly recommend taking some sort of notes with a calendar because it is immensely helpful. There we go. So that is it today for sowing my Iceland Poppies and Pansies, some cool season flowers that work really well in the same tray together. Please comment below if you have any questions or comment on how you germinate your Iceland poppy seeds. I would love to hear some different ideas and if you've had success with it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel to follow along with all things garden. As I said, a lot coming up, especially snapdragons, using my preferred soil block mixture. So we'll see as the season goes if this soil block is gonna work or not with the ocean forest potting soil. I hope so, but there just might be a little too many big chunks in there. So keep your fingers crossed for me, friends. See you in the next one, everybody. Happy planting. Bye.